What's good, everybody? This is CP, and today I'm going to talk about the Vancouver Canucks. I'm going to talk about a few potential free agent targets the Vancouver Canucks could target this summer to potentially help improve their team heading into the next NHL season. For those unaware, the Canucks were able to lock up free agent Andrei Kuzmenko over the summer for a potential bargain deal, which in my opinion is a very good start to their offseason. And in many ways, he could turn out to have an immediate impact on the Canucks offense starting next year. Now, compared to most teams, the Canucks don't have the most cap space heading into this offseason, as they have most of their top guys locked up on long-term contracts. So from afar, it seems like they probably won't make any big splash signings. Instead, I think it's more logical for new GM Patrik Allvin to potentially go after some of the smaller names in free agency this summer. Now, if we quickly look at the Vancouver Canucks roster, we can kind of tell that they have most of their money committed to their top two lines, including guys like Horvat, Besser, Pettersson, Garland, and JT Miller, assuming that he doesn't get traded. And then moving on to their defense, they have big money committed to the three names, including Ekman, Larson, Myers, and Hughes. And then finally, in goaltending, they have Demko locked up at a $5 million cap hit until 2026. So obviously, Allvin's hands are a little bit tied up, and he probably does not have as much financial freedom as he'd like to make some big moves to improve this team. In my opinion, two areas he could look to improve that would make the most sense would be to add a little bit of depth on defense, especially on the right side and the bottom pairing, and also add some improvements on his bottom two lines. So maybe he goes after a solid third or fourth line guy. One of the first names who I think Allvin could consider might be a name like Justin Schultz. Schultz is a smooth skating right-handed D-man with a little bit of offensive upside. And yes, he's coming off a little bit of a down year, scoring only 4 goals and 19 points in 74 games for the Capitals last year. But at his best, he was a 12-goal and 50-point D-man for the Pittsburgh Penguins a few years ago. Personally, I'm not sure if he can be that player again, but I think he would give a huge boost to the Vancouver Canucks blue line. He can also probably give you a solid 17 to 20 minutes a night and be the quarterback of the Canucks' second power play unit. In my opinion, I feel like he's a pretty good fit as the team's second pairing right-hand D guy, and bringing in Schultz would give the Canucks more mobility on the right side, and probably better ability to generate offense from the blue line, which was a little bit of a problem last year, especially since they currently have Tyler Myers and Luke Schenn locked up on the right side. It's fair to say that those two guys aren't known for being great puck movers or reliable point producers. So adding in a guy like Justin Schultz should give the Canucks a new dimension they have been lacking on the right side. Schultz is also a 2-time Stanley Cup winner, so bringing in championship experience should only help the team. And we also can't forget that he is a BC boy, so who knows, maybe suiting up for his home province NHL team is something he wants to do before he retires. In my opinion, Schultz is not a long-term solution. However, he can be a nice stopgap defenseman they bring in for a few years to buy time for the prospects to develop, or until Allvin can find ways to free up a little more cap space to make significant changes to the roster. Colin Miller might be another worthwhile name for the Canucks to look at, especially if they're looking to give their D a little more insurance on the right side. Overall, Miller has been quietly a solid middle to bottom pairing D-man for most of his career. Despite playing on a not so good Buffalo Sabres team last season, Miller managed to score 14 points in 38 games and was only a -2. Nonetheless, I think Miller could be a steady presence to add to the Canucks blue line. He averaged around close to 19 minutes last year, and I feel like he can provide similar value in Vancouver. Miller just finished up a 4-year contract he signed with the Vegas Golden Knights with a $3.875 annual cap hit. However, at 29 and coming off a very mediocre year, I don't expect him to demand a lot of money in free agency this year. If anything, I could see him getting slightly less than his $3.875 cap hit for his next contract. And compared to the rest of the free agency pool, I see Miller as maybe a tier 2 or even tier 3 free agent. Of course, behind bigger names such as John Klingberg and Josh Manson. In my opinion, he could be one of those more underrated right-hand D guys the Canucks go after, as I think the Canucks could slide him into a second or third pairing role and he could do just fine. Once again, the Canucks don't have the cap space to make any groundbreaking moves this summer, but I feel like adding a name like Miller could definitely give the Canucks blue line more depth and support than they had last year. Zach Aston-Reese might be a decent low-key free agent for the Canucks to target. In many ways, I think he's one of the more underrated but safer bottom 6 guys to go after in this year's free agency pool. Known as more of a defensive forward, he spent the better part of the last 5 seasons with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And it's important to highlight that he has consistently been a plus player in every season he has been in the NHL. Looking at the Canucks lineup, I could see him being a good fit as maybe a third or fourth line guy to round out the forward core. In my opinion, it doesn't hurt to add an experienced two-way player to help out the younger guys on the roster, especially at the bottom of the lineup. He can also play an important role on one of the penalty killing units, an area where the Canucks could definitely use some improvements, as they were ranked near the bottom of the league last year. Obviously, his offensive numbers could be a lot better, but for his defense alone, I feel like Aston-Reese is the type of player Vancouver should definitely consider bringing in, as they could use a few more defensively strong forwards in their lineup, especially in the bottom six. If you were the Vancouver Canucks GM or management, would you go after Zach Aston-Reese, or would you go after a defensive forward with a little bit more scoring upside? Chris Tierney might be a decent depth forward for the Canucks to target. The 28-year-old has been a well-respected two-way forward in his career who could instantly improve the center depth of any team he joins. Overall, he's a pretty competent face-off guy and a solid contributor on both special teams. In short, he's a very solid two-way center who was once a consistent double-digit scorer and almost a 50-point guy in the league. For whatever reason, his numbers dropped off quite a bit over the past few seasons, and to be quite frank, it may be a product of playing on some very bad Ottawa Senators teams. So for that reason alone, I feel like the Canucks may be able to get him for a little bit cheaper than his previous contract, which paid him $3.5 million in average annual value. I think adding Tierney would go a long way in solidifying the Canucks' depth at the center position, especially for the bottom two lines, which already includes Jason Dickinson as the other center. And at 28 years old, I feel like he has at least 2 to 3 years, maybe even 4 to 5 years of good hockey left. And let's say the Canucks can lock him up for a not too long term, so maybe 3 years or 4 years. I think he can definitely provide some solid support for the less experienced players like Podkolzin, Kuzmenko, and Höglander to continue to develop and grow their game in the NHL. Once again, bringing in a player like Tierney would not make the Canucks an instant contender, but I feel like he could be a very underrated, solid signing that could at least give the Canucks a stopgap center for the next few years and buy their young core some more time to develop before they're ready to take the next step into the next level. How do you feel about this signing, or do you think the Canucks should target a younger center with a different skill set? Yeah, so let me know if you agree or disagree with what I said in this video. Feel free to comment below and share some of your thoughts, and I'll see everybody next time.